The atmosphere in the studio was electric as the broadcast countdown hit 0. Cameras zoomed in on the sleek panel table, where political firepower from both sides of the aisle was about to collide. On one end sat Senator J.D. Vance, the conservative Ohio lawmaker with a sharp tongue and an even sharper mind. Known for his calculated arguments and deep-rooted views on American identity and security, Vance looked calm and composed, flipping through notes with the quiet confidence of someone ready for battle. On the other end sat Assemblyman Zoran Mamdani of New York, a proud democratic socialist and rising progressive voice. Mamdani had built a national following with his bold rhetoric, grassroots advocacy, and unapologetic belief in open borders and transformative immigration reform. With his sleeves rolled up and eyes locked on the cameras, he radiated passion, ready to take on what he often referred to as the politics of fear. The host, sensing the powder keg ready to ignite, barely finished introducing the topic before Mamdani launched in. With a practiced cadence, he delivered a stirring monologue on America's immigration system, condemning it as inhumane, racist, and broken beyond recognition. "We are a nation of immigrants," he said, "yet we treat newcomers like criminals. We cage children. We build walls. We turn our backs on those fleeing war and poverty." He paused, letting his words hang in the air, his eyes sweeping across the studio audience. What kind of nation do we want to be? One that welcomes the tired and poor, or one that shuts its doors in the face of suffering? Some audience members nodded in agreement. The moderator turned to J.D. Vance and asked for his response. Vance didn't rush. He took a slow breath, sat upright, and looked directly at Mamdani. "Assemblyman, I appreciate your passion," he began, voice smooth and measured. "But policy isn't poetry. And the stakes aren't theoretical." He shifted slightly, gesturing with his pen. "It's easy to talk about compassion when you don't have to deal with the consequences. I've spoken with mothers who lost their children to fentanyl brought across our southern border. I've visited neighborhoods in my own state, communities long ignored, where jobs are scarce and wages have been driven down because we haven't secured our borders or enforced our laws." The temperature in the room changed. J.D. Vance continued, now more assertive, "This isn't about rejecting immigrants. It's about demanding a system that works. One that protects American citizens, including legal immigrants, from unchecked chaos. You say we're a nation of immigrants. We're also a nation of laws. And when one collapses, the other isn't far behind." Mamdani leaned in, trying to respond, but Vance didn't give him the opening. Instead, he doubled down. "Let me tell you a story," Vance said. "In Cincinnati, I met a Guatemalan-born small business owner who came here legally. He works 12-hour days, pays his taxes, and employs 5 Americans. He told me he feels like a fool because he sees people breaking the law, crossing illegally, and getting rewarded with housing and aid. He asked me, why did I follow the rules? That's a question no one on your side ever answers." The camera cut to Mamdani, his jaw clenched, fingers tapping the table impatiently. The studio audience was now locked in. The mood had shifted from debate to duel. Mamdani attempted to pivot, interjecting about systemic racism and colonial history, but Vance calmly interrupted, never raising his voice. "You speak of empathy, Zoran, but you weaponize it. You use it as a political shield to ignore the damage that unregulated policies create, for our poor, for our working class, and yes, for future immigrants who now see a system of chaos instead of opportunity." The studio, once vibrant with murmurs, fell into a quiet tension. J.D. Vance leaned forward one final time, his voice unwavering. I'm not against immigration. I'm against anarchy. And if we can't have an honest conversation about the cost of ignoring our borders, then we are not having a serious conversation at all. A few claps echoed through the studio, timid at first, then louder. The host, clearly caught off guard by the intensity of the exchange, stepped in to pause for a break. As the screen faded to commercial, the camera caught Mamdani, silent, shifting in his seat. J.D. Vance, meanwhile, calmly sipped his water, his point delivered, sharp, complete, and impossible to ignore. When the cameras came back from the commercial break, the tone had visibly changed. The moderator welcomed the viewers back, but her voice lacked the energy it had earlier. The audience, once reactive and divided, now sat in an attentive silence. The debate wasn't just about immigration anymore, it had become a moment of ideological reckoning between two vastly different Americas, and all eyes were on what would happen next. Zoran Mamdani, clearly aware that J.D. Vance's composed but brutal takedown had shifted momentum, leaned forward, trying to reclaim the narrative. His voice, though passionate, now carried a slightly defensive edge. Senator Vance, Mamdani began, you've framed this issue through the lens of fear. You've told stories of tragedy, crime, and chaos. But you conveniently ignore the larger truth, that this country was built by those who came here with nothing. The Irish, the Italians, the Chinese. None of them were invited. Many were feared. Yet they laid the foundation of modern America. He turned slightly, addressing the audience as much as Vance. You speak of law and order, but laws themselves have been used to exclude, to marginalize, to uphold systems of inequality. The question isn't just what the law says, but whether it's just. If enslaved people had followed the law, there would have been no abolition. If civil rights activists obeyed unjust rules, we'd still be living under segregation. There were soft nods in the crowd. It was a compelling appeal to morality and history, and Mamdani knew it. His tone rose, driven by emotion. What you call chaos, Senator, I call courage. These people risk everything to come here, not to hurt us, but to live. And yes, some laws may be broken along the way, but laws without compassion are just cages in disguise. The audience responded with a scattering of applause. Mamdani smiled faintly, knowing he had landed some blows of his own. He turned back to J.D. Vance, eyes defiant. But Vance didn't flinch. He let the moment breathe, then leaned slightly toward his mic, speaking in a voice that was strikingly calm, too calm for the storm he was about to unleash. You quote history, Zoran, Vance said, but you rewrite it to serve your agenda. Yes, America was built by immigrants, but also by structure, by discipline, and by a system that demanded integration, not endless accommodation. The Irish and Italians you reference didn't expect the nation to bend to them. They worked, they sacrificed, and they became Americans. He paused, his voice still steady. You keep using the word, compassion, and I respect that instinct. But compassion without limits is not virtue, it's surrender. You talk about cages. Let me tell you what else feels like a cage. Living in a working-class neighborhood where your children can't walk to school safely. Watching your wages stagnate because labor markets are flooded with unvetted workers. Losing your son to a fentanyl overdose that originated across an open border. Mamdani opened his mouth to respond, but Vance didn't let him. He was in a role now, his delivery crisp, precise, lethal. You want to romanticize illegal immigration. But for every story of courage, there's a story of devastation. You say these people come here to live. That may be true for many, but not all. And our job as leaders isn't to roll the dice with our citizens' lives. It's to protect them. All of them. Black, white, immigrant, native born. Security is not xenophobia. And protecting your home doesn't make you a bigot, it makes you responsible. The room fell into complete silence. Then Vance leaned in for the final blow, staring straight at Mamdani. You call it xenophobia. I call it leadership. Because no leader watches his people suffer just to maintain moral optics. And if you think that's debatable, then maybe you're not fit to shape policy, only hashtags. The words echoed with brutal clarity. Mamdani sat frozen, his expression caught somewhere between stunned and speechless. For a few seconds, he seemed to be searching for a comeback, but found none. Even the moderator, caught off guard, stayed silent longer than usual before awkwardly thanking the panelists and beginning the wrap-up. Backstage, the buzz was immediate. Producers whispered, analysts texted frantically. Social media lit up within minutes. The clip of Vance's final line, "Maybe you're not fit to shape policy, only hashtags," spread like wildfire across platforms. Conservative circles hailed it as a rhetorical masterstroke. Even some centrist commentators admitted it was a devastating exchange. Meanwhile, Mamdani's supporters scrambled to frame the moment as a cheap shot, but the damage had been done. For all his energy and passion, he had been outmaneuvered, factually, emotionally, and rhetorically. It wasn't just a debate. It was a political knockout. And J.D. Vance had left no room for debate.